Alright, first I'm gonna start off drawing this. This right here is my version of a cell. You look through a microscope, it might not look like that, but let's just say this is what a cell looks like. We all learned about a cell in anatomy class, biology, whatever you took. We learned this is the nucleus with all the genetic information and the genomes and all that stuff. And this around here is the organelles sitting around in the cytoplasm. And this is just the outer layer of this cell. Who gives a damn, right? Like, why do we need to learn this? Like, how does this apply to my life? Who cares? That's kind of like what I told myself. I learned the information anyway. I studied, did all my work, because that's what I needed to do to pass my classes, but I never knew why it mattered. After reading this book, I found out why. The name of this book is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. And the book, just to give a quick summary of it, they didn't pay me, by the way, to advertise. This is just that good. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. It's about this woman, which you see a picture of her right here. She was born in 1920, and when she turned about, I'd say 30 to 40, she ended up getting cancer, cervical cancer to be exact, and it was really bad. It was terrible cancer. She ended up going to this hospital where she ended up going to this hospital where it was on a hospital where they admitted the Negroes because they weren't good enough to go to the all-white hospitals. But that's another story for another day. Long story short, the scientist there named George Guy, he was developing all these new discoveries about cells, and he started putting two and two together and doing experiments and figuring out that cells was our key to finding cures and stuff for our future. And so he took a lot of the cells illegally from a lot of the patients, and this woman's cells is one of them. George Guy, the scientist, spent a lot of time looking for immortal cells. What I mean by that is a lot of times when cells leave the body, they die. But he was trying to find this culture and this formula to keep cells alive outside of human bodies, because if the cells die soon after they're outside the body, then you can't use them to make tests and find vaccines and do these different experiments. So when this woman came along, she had cervical cancer. They took a sample of her cell, and what do you know? It ended up being an immortal cell, the first ever that they discovered. And not only did it stay alive, it thrived. It multiplied, and it was multiplying by the twos and threes, and every day they more and more, thousands, hundreds of thousands. And what happened was, in a normal cell, and here the genome, it tells the cell when to divide and make another duplicate. It's called mitosis, or cell division. But in a normal cell, it only does it when you need to. Whereas in this woman's cell, when she had her cancer cell, which is what they took, one of the genomes in there malfunctioned, and it kind of went haywire, and then so it just kept dividing like crazy. It began to the point where it was so many of the cells where they had to develop new factories called HeLa factories, which is the first two letters of her first and the first two letters of her last, and they call them HeLa cells. They had to create new factories just to keep producing and making space for more of her cells. That's how fast, how rapid they were producing. And so George Guy knew he had something, but he didn't really know what to do with it yet, but he knew he had something. This guy right here, I forgot what his name was, but he created a vaccine for polio, the polio virus, which was killing a lot of people at the time. He created a polio vaccine. Obviously, it wasn't a vaccine yet. It's what he thought to be a vaccine, but before they distribute it to the public, they have to do a bunch of tests and stuff to make sure that it's safe for the public. They go through strenuous amounts of tests. And so what this guy did, he got a bunch of people, I say well over 200 people, and he took their cells, extracted their cells out of their bodies, and he injected into these cells the polio vaccine. So after these cells, these healthy human cells have the polio vaccine inside of it, right? So these are healthy cells with the polio vaccine. What he did was also, he took a bunch of monkey cells and injected in those monkey cells the polio virus, right? So this is bad. This is bad cell with the virus infected. He puts this with these clean cells with the polio vaccine and exposes it to the virus. He exposes these cells to the virus to see if it fights off, if the vaccine fights off the polio virus. If it works successfully, so all of these different types of cells and different human beings, if it works successfully, that means that the vaccine is good. If it does not work, then that means that it's not good. But here's the problem. Here's where I relate it back to this woman. To get these monkey cells, it costed them, this science is millions of dollars. It cost them a lot of money. So he needed a way where he get a bunch of cells for cheap amount of money and at a low cost and just easy access. It was just tough to get all those monkey cells and to expose them to this. So here's George Guy over here with all these HeLa cells over here, like, hey, check it out. I got some over here. It helped you out with your study with this polio vaccine. So he says, so what they had to first do was test all of these HeLa cells. They had to first test them to make sure they were susceptible to the polio virus. Because if they weren't susceptible, then that means that how could they expose these clean polio vaccines to that virus? So they did the test. Yes, indeed, they were susceptible. So they used all of these HeLa cells and matched them with the polio vaccinated cells. And what do you know? Of course, the vaccine fought off the virus. And boom, this guy, I forgot what his name, you can Google it, he discovered our polio vaccine, which I'm sure saved thousands and thousands of lives and hundreds of thousands of amputations. So this woman right here essentially helped create the polio vaccine. She helped with the study, along with many other things. This woman right here, what makes it pretty sad, and then I'm getting to the conclusion, the sad thing about this book is that her family knew nothing about this. Her family knew nothing about it. This woman is responsible for all hundreds and hundreds of discoveries, and the science has benefited from her cells, and he did all types of studies, just like the study that this guy did for the polio vaccine. They took her cells into space to test it, how the cells would respond in zero gravity. They did this, put the cells in this atmosphere. They put the cells under this amount of exposure to this and this and this and that to see them. And all that being said, her cells were important to science. And she ended up dying after she got cervical cancer. And guess what? Her kids grew up poor, didn't even know about these cells, and they didn't have enough for their own health insurance. So that's what this book talks about. It talks about the injustice and the unprofessionalism that took place at that time.